Okay, so here are some of the questions that I received that I want to explore today. Question number one is as follows. In a time of so much uncertainty and bad news, how do you personally stay hopeful and emotionally strong? So it's a good question. I'm sure everyone has their own techniques, but I will tell you this. I don't stay strong in pretending that things are fine. I stay strong because I know that for 3,000 years, the Jewish people did not rely or did not depend on the circumstances that they found themselves in. We could have had the best of circumstances, we could have had the worst of circumstances. We don't rely on them because we knew that they, at the end of the day, cannot influence us. What does influence us and what does gives us a hope, and I would even say strength, is the idea that we are a nation that is not reliant on circumstances. We are reliant on our purpose. And as long as I can show up to every day and fulfill my purpose, I have strength, I have hope, I have optimism for a better future. Because if I can focus on my micro, not necessarily on the macro, then I know that something good will come out of it. And I think that that's what we should all be doing. Sometimes, yes, the bad news give us all sorts of moods and they bombard us with all sorts of distractions. But at the end of the day, if we can focus on our family, if we can focus on the good deeds that we need to do, if we can focus on our neighborhoods, on our communities, and spread the light in those structures, in those environments, then we will have created a source of hope, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. You know, one of the great mystical ideas from the book of the Tanya, which, by the way, was authored by Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi of about 300 years ago, whose yahrzeit was yesterday on the 24th of Tevet, was that evil is temporary, good is permanent. And therefore, when I do a mitzvah, I have left an indelible, permanent mark on myself and on the world because I've drawn down goodness to the world. That goodness is permanent because it comes from God, who's permanent, who's infinite. And therefore, when I focus on the good that I have to do, on the purpose that I have to fulfill, that gives me strength. That gives me hope because I know that I've created something good that is permanent. So that really is what gives me strength, or that helps me stay hopeful and emotionally strong in uncertain times when bad news are knocking at the door. I would even add just one more technique, and that is that, I know that we love watching the news, and I know that we love going online, and we each have our own websites that we go to. But I think that we have to put a limit to that. I say that to my children all the time. And I think we have to put a limit both in quality and in quantity. And I'll explain. In quality, there are times that have to be dedicated for that. Because very often when we're on the news all the time, it takes over the quality moments that we need to have during the day. One quality moment, for example, is waking up in the morning. That should be a quality moment. Because the way you wake up is the way the rest of the day is going to be. If you wake up in a bad mood, you'll be in a bad mood for the rest of the day. So the way you wake up, I think, should be a quality moment. It's a very important moment. Many people, they wake up, what do? While they're still in bed. They barely opened up their eyes from sleep. They go immediately on their phones, they check the messages, they check the news, they check whatever it is. And they don't realize that it really affects their day. So don't allow those bad news or those good news even to take over the quality moments. That's number one. But don't allow them also to take over the quantity moments. People become addicted to news and they watch them all the time. They think that, oh, God forbid, if I don't find out right now, if America attacked Iran, which might be happening in the next 24 hours to 48 hours, as they say, then, I'm going to lose out. What are you going to lose out on exactly? Don't you think that you're going to be losing out much more if you don't bond with the people around you, with your family, with whatever needs to be done? So don't let those bad news take over your quality times and your quantity times. And that maybe is more of a practical technique of how to ensure that you stay strong and emotionally healthy during these uncertain times. But again, the essence of it is focusing on a purpose and knowing that that is what eventually becomes permanent. The rest, the circumstances, we've had many circumstances in Jewish history. They come and go. They don't really have any effect on us. We shouldn't allow them to have an effect on us because they don't. So that is how we can stay hopeful and emotionally strong. That's question one. If you have any questions, by the way, any comments, any disagreements, please feel free to share them. Yes, Adi, please.
Your I think it's gates, that we're in charge of our gates, of
Right.
what we hear, what we see, and what we say.
Right.
That we.
No, excellent. That's right. Yeah, it's that story I've told many times, but it's one of my favorite stories about a Hasidic Jew who went to his great master, the Baal Shem Tov, who was the founder of the Hasidic movement some 500 years ago. And he asked him, Rabbi, please teach me the secret to self-control. And the rabbi said to him, I can't teach you that, but if you go to so-and-so in this village, he'll teach you that. So the man goes to so-and-so in that village. He goes to his home and he knocks on the door. It's cold outside and he's hoping that the man will open the door and allow him in. He sees the man through the window, but he's not opening the door. So he knocks louder, still not opening the door. And he knocks again and again. And after 20 minutes, finally, the man opens the door and says, welcome. He says, why did you let me outside? You freeze when I've been knocking for the past 20 minutes. And the man says, I wanted to teach you the art of self-control, because in life, you'll have many things knocking at these doors. But remember, you're the master of those doors. You can allow which doors to open. You can decide who comes in, who does not come in spite of the knocks, how long they come in for, how much you open the door. All that you're in charge of. That's the art of self-control. And it's true, it's what you're saying. We have bad news knocking on our door, or all sorts of things, but we're in charge here. If we just woke up in the morning, you don't have to open the door. If it's bad news that will take away your quality times, or your quantity, don't open those doors. And when you do open those doors, make sure you open them also carefully and cautiously. Don't allow everything in. And if you are going to allow things that are worth coming in, then maybe you also have to ask yourselves, how long am I going to allow those guests to come in for? Maybe some need to stay for just a few minutes and then you kick them out. But you're in charge of yourself and of those doors. Yes, Andrea. Right.
And then it kind of feels like the news is more in the background.
Right.
Like putting things away,
Right. It's an excellent point. And yes, I think Judaism purposefully fills those moments that need to be quality moments with quality. So, for example, when we wake up in the morning, and that needs to be a quality moment, as mentioned, we fill that moment up with the prayer of Modani and other things too, right? The prayer of gratitude. Gratitude equals happiness. Happiness equals gratitude. When we start with gratitude, our day then is a more grateful one and a more happy one. You know, it's interesting, but apparently, a few years ago, there was a doctor who went to this big conference, and the main theme, the main medical challenge of the conference was this disease, and I don't know what it's called, where some people wake up in the morning, they get out of bed and they faint. Have you ever heard of that? They wake up and they get this vertigo and they just collapse. And they were trying to tackle it medically. And then someone came up with a solution that you don't need to give medication for that. All you need to do is tell those people to wait 12 seconds, because it takes time for the blood to go up to the head. I don't know exactly the medical procedure here, but it takes time for the blood flow to resume itself after sleep. If the person waits 12 seconds, then the blood flow will be at its ultimate stage, and people won't have this vertigo anymore and they won't faint. And then there was a Jewish doctor said, who was there, and he said, you know, it's amazing, because if you say the prayer of Modani, you'll have 12 seconds go by. Why? Because in the prayer of Modani, you have 12 words. It takes about 1 second to say each word. Modeh ani lefanecha. So if you follow the Jewish tradition, like you're saying, of staying in bed, and as soon as you open up your eyes, you say the Modeh ani, then you won't have that problem. And I was thinking about that because it's true physically, as that medical conference concluded, but it's certainly true spiritually also. Sometimes you just have to wait 12 seconds. Yeah, someone's knocking, it doesn't matter, just wait. First fill it with quality. Say Modeh ani. And then you want to have spiritual vertigo. Then you want faint spiritually. And it will help you also on other fronts. Yes.
Talking about, waking up and feeling good, a friend of mine suggested to me, and I'm remembering it now because I forget. But she said, as soon as she wakes up in the morning, she smiles. She just physically smiles, and it changes her whole life.
Wow.
And I started doing that for a while, and it
helped?
did. It's the weirdest thing. You just wake up and you smile.
Yeah. I mean, there's that pencil experiment. You know the pencil experiment where they asked people to hold a pencil. If you hold a pencil like this, it makes you smile, forces you to smile. And people felt more relaxed because they were smiling, even though it was forceful, but still. So maybe just forcing a smile does help.
It's weird.
Yeah.
But I just started thinking of what I'm grateful for, how I woke up and the greatest that
Yeah.
I woke up.
Yeah.
And,
Changes the day, there's no doubt.
But
Yeah. But I would also say it's very much connected, and we'll get to the other question soon, but you were saying the bedtime Shema. Rabbi Steinsaltz would often say that the way you go to sleep at night is also the way you'll wake up in the morning. So it's not necessarily how you wake up, even though if you went to sleep in a bad mood, you can still maybe salvage yourself if you wake up with a smile, if you say Modeh ani. But really the focus should be in the evening when you go to sleep. Because if you go to sleep in a bad mood, you'll also wake up in a bad mood. He would say if you go to sleep like a lion, you'll wake up like a lion. If you go to sleep like a dog, you'll wake up like a dog. So you have to be careful too.
this friend of mine says smile,
Wow, you see? And then she wakes up with a natural smile, not a forced smile.
Yeah.
Right. Very good. Okay, let's continue here. What are the most important values or skills we should really be teaching our children today to prepare them for life? Wow, there's a lot of them. I'm sure you can come up with some. But the most important values, I would say, are the values of Judaism. Number one, that their actions matter. The actions, the decisions matter, the small ones and the big ones. We're, faith of deed. We've often said that we are what we do. That's what defines us at the end of the day. When we die, no one will look at our moods. No one will look at the way we woke up in the morning, we felt. People will look at our deeds, what we did, whether we were kind, whether good-hearted, whether we helped others. So your deeds matter. And every deed can create a shift, not just in yourselves, but in the world altogether. You never know the ripple effect of deeds. And that's particularly true with good deeds. So I would say that that's value number one. Number two, I would say that life is not about comfort, convenience, even though we try to give all the comfort to our children as we want. But life is about perseverance. Going, as Winston Churchill famously said, that success is going from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. Because, as we know, no life is smooth sailing. They'll face failure, they'll face challenges. And if they're looking for comfort and if that's all they had in life, then they might not be able to overcome the challenges. But if we teach them resilience, perseverance, knowing how to overcome challenges and find the good in them sometimes, then I think that we've given them a lot of an important skill. I would also say that I would teach them purpose. And purpose means that you are not just serving yourself, quite the opposite. You're serving something that's greater than yourself. It's not about you. It's not about what you need. It's about what you are needed for, what's needed of you. I think that's tremendously important. Lord Jonathan Sacks, Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory, would say that he encourages people to switch one word, and that word is the word of self. And instead of saying self, say other. Self-preoccupied, other preoccupied. Self-esteem, other esteem. There's so many words in English that come with the word self. Well, change self to other. And if you do that, you'll have a much more meaningful life. And also a life that will be permanent. Because as we said, good stays in the world forever, stays in the hearts of the people that you touched and the souls that you uplifted. So when you're other-oriented and you touch others, then that goodness continues on and on and on. That purpose is really everlasting. So that is yet another skill. Maybe one last, there are many, many more, obviously, and I'm sure you can come up with some as mentioned. But I think one important value is that they are not alone. We live in a very lonely world. And the amount of people that claim to feel lonely, not to necessarily be lonely, but to feel lonely is astounding. I remember in the 80s, I remember reading that book actually. There was a book called Bowling Alone. Have you ever heard of it? Bowling Alone, it's a thick book. And it's all these researches about how people really bowl alone. They feel, bowling is a game you can play alone. But they feel very lonely. And that is very much the source of depression, not necessarily clinical depression, but certainly sadness, depression, beating yourself down, losing yourself, disorienting yourself. And I think that when we teach our children that they are not alone, that first and foremost, God is with them at all times. And God is with them not just because God wants to be a policeman, but God is a loving father and he's cheering them on and he believes in them, then they'll believe in themselves too. And that will give them that strength also to overcome those challenges that we spoke about. So I think that's also crucially important. If I think of more, I'll let you know. All right. Next question. So how do we grow spiritually without constantly comparing ourselves to others? Well, very often, we're in the driver's seat. Let's not forget. You decide whether you're comparing yourself to others or whether you don't want to compare yourself to others. If you're on Facebook or on Instagram all the time and constantly compare yourself to others, well, then it's your fault. But sometimes it's stronger than us. Okay, so I'm comparing. Then I think we have to remember just one thing, that God did not make us to be copies. God made us to be originals. Every one of us is original. Even identical twins are not the same. They're originals, two originals. No matter how identical they may be physically, but personality-wise, spiritually, they're not. So I think remembering that we're unique and that we have a unique role to play in God's cosmic symphony, then that helps us, I think, grow, as the question is here, to grow spiritually without comparing ourselves to others. Okay, two more questions here I have. How can a busy person build a real relationship with God when they constantly feel guilty for not doing enough? Well, let me first say, and let me make it clear, and I think I made it clear in the past, but guilt is not a Jewish concept. Guilt is not Judaism. No matter how much we may feel guilty, or we may have that guilty mother, or we may have been imposed with guilt over our lifetime, it doesn't matter. Guilt is not a Jewish. We don't believe in guilt in Judaism. In fact, the Talmud says something quite astounding, and that is that the righteous have no guilt. The wicked are filled with guilt. Filled with regrets. But the righteous don't have any. Now, why? Because they're righteous? Even the righteous fail. In the words of King Solomon, Ein tzadik ba'aretz asher yaseh tov v'lo yecheta. There is no righteous person on earth that only does good and does not fail. Failure is part of the human experience, even among the most righteous. So how come they don't regret their failures? If everyone has failures, how come? Because they know that it's a toxic element in life. It's not something Jews believe in. We don't believe in guilt. So feeling guilty, how does that question go? Constantly feeling guilty for not doing enough is not a Jewish thing. My beloved Rabbi Dean Stein once told me, I remember I was a teenager, maybe 15, 16 years old. I was feeling guilty about something. And he told me something, and I'll never forget. He said, I'm sorry, my phone is connected to my daughter's calling me from Jerusalem, but she's going to have to wait. But he told me, and I'll never forget that. He said, take your guilt, put it in a drawer, and lock it up. Just lock it up. And in 20 years from now, if you feel like it, you can go back to the drawer, open it up, and listen to your guilt. But just lock it up. It's not a Jewish thing. So feeling constantly guilty for not doing enough is not a Jewish thing. How do you strengthen your relationship with Hashem? Well, I think that everyone has to carve moments for God. After all, we're in a relationship with God, and God is in a relationship with us. No relationship works if you don't carve time for it. Whether you're married, whether you have children, whether you have friends, it doesn't matter. For relationships to work, you need to carve time for them. So carve time for your relationship with God. Carve times for prayer. Carve times to speak with Him when things don't go too well. It could be just driving down the highway, or while you're in the shower, or when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're all confused. And speak to God. God will listen to you. Whenever you carve time for Him, that's the magic about our relationship with God. I don't think it exists in any other relationship. Because when we carve time for Him, God carves time for us, the same exact time. It's always available, 24/7. So carve time for God, set times, and yes, times based on the challenges that you are facing, the moods that you have. I would say that's number one. And those, by the way, should be consistent times. Consistency is key. I think another way to strengthen our relationship with God is by maybe even asking ourselves every day, making even a list of 5 things that I did just for God. I don't feel like doing it. In relationships, you have to do things for your spouse, whether you feel like it or not. That's what builds really the relationship more than anything else. I'll tell you a little secret. Well, it's recorded, but I'll tell you a little secret. I buy flowers for my wife every Friday. Do I believe in flowers? No. They die after 3 days. It's like the biggest waste of money. Do I like buying flowers? No. Plants maybe, that you can water and flowers. But she loves flowers. So I do it anyway. Because that's part of any relationship where you do things just for the other. And that's where the real love dwells and exists. Because if I do things when it's only logical to me, maybe I'm doing them for myself. After all, they're logical. And because they're logical, I connect with them. So it's me connecting. But when I do things strictly for the others, then I'm doing them strictly for that. That's what love means. It's not selfish, it's selfless. And in many ways, I think it's the same with God. We have to do things just for God. And fascinatingly, when we do things for God, just for Him, God does things for us, just for us. It just works. I'll tell you the story again, and I know I've shared the story in the past, but the story of Yafa. And I heard it directly from her. Yafa is a woman about 20 years ago, maybe a few more years, couldn't have children. For 12 years, she couldn't have children. And one day she was so desperate that she decided to go into a taxi in Jerusalem late at night and tell the taxi driver, please take me to the greatest rabbi you know. You take people from all over the country to rabbis, I'm sure you're in Jerusalem. Take me to the greatest rabbi you know. So this taxi driver takes Yafa to Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who was one of the great rabbis in Jerusalem of the day. And she came with a medical file. And when they reached his home, she knocked on the door, and Rabbi Auerbach opened up. It was late at night, about 11:30. And Rabbi Auerbach says, yes, how can I help you? Yafa says, look, here's my medical file. Doctors have said that I can't have children, but I need a blessing. I want to have a child. The rabbi looks through the medical file, gives it back to Yafa and says, sorry, I can't help you. And then to add salt to injury, he says to her, and by the way, God doesn't owe you anything. Now she's sobbing. She's leaving the house. And she hears the rabbi walking behind her. Says, yes, Rabbi, what can I do? Rabbi says, God doesn't owe you anything. But if you do something that you don't owe God, God will do something that he doesn't owe you. She went back to the taxi and she thought, what can I do for God that I don't owe him? That Friday, she went to the local hospital, Shaarei Tzedek Hospital, with a bunch of snacks and chocolate bars and candies to give out to the sick children in Shaarei Tzedek. And she said to herself, I'm going to do this every Friday. 10 months later, she had a baby boy. Today, Yafa has 5 children, last time I checked. Why? Because she did something that she didn't owe God. So God did something that he didn't owe her. Does it always work? I don't know. But there's a relationship there. And that relationship sometimes really is mutual. And in many ways, I think that, and by the way, Yafa told today, she has a whole network of people giving out snacks and chocolate bars and so on to those children. In fact, my daughter, Nina, who just tried calling me now, she's part of that network. And every Friday, I think on Wednesdays too, sometimes they go and give out snacks and all of that in the Shaarei Tzedek Hospital. But I think that's key in every relationship too, not just to carve out times, but to do things, at least 5 things a day, I would say, that you don't owe God. Do you want to speak to that person now? Maybe not, but you're going to do it for God. Do you want to help someone? Maybe not. I'm not in the mood. Let me watch my football game. But you're going to do it for God. If you have 5 things like that every day, then God will do things that he doesn't owe you to. So I think that's crucial. Okay, one last question here. Well, I think we touched upon this, but still, how do we balance being informed about current events with protecting our mental and spiritual health? So we spoke about this. Don't allow every knock on the door to force you to open those doors. I think that, I'll just add one thing, and that is that I think that the greatest curse in life, there's no greater curse to me than that, is boredom, being bored. When you are bored, you allow for that door to stay wide open, and then all sorts of garbage comes in. One of the great historians, it's a man named Robert Nozick. You can Google him. And he says that most wars in the world started because of boredom. Just France was born with Great Britain, so it started a war, and so on. And I think it's true of personal lives. When you are bored, then, by the way, when the crime shoots up? In the summer times, because people have vacation and they bored and they do all sorts of crazy things. I remember I used to visit a lot of inmates in prison, and I lived in Atlanta at the time. I don't know if you're familiar with Atlanta, but one of the big counties of Atlanta is DeKalb County. And there's a massive jail in DeKalb County. And the warden, during my first visit, welcomed me and he gave me a tour. 3,600 inmates in that jail. And I asked him, just out of curiosity, what's your busiest night? When people check in, what's your busiest night? I thought he would say Friday night, Saturday night. He said Wednesday night. I said, why? Why do you think that is? Wednesday night? I mean, no one's partying Wednesday night. He says, that's the point. When they're partying, they're busy partying. Wednesday night, they're bored. They don't know what to do. So they go and steal. They go and kill. They go and do this. And it's so true. When people are bored. So I think one of the ways to maintain that healthy balance is by sticking to doing good, to your purpose, to finding things that are fruitful, that are productive to do. Otherwise, really, that door brings in all sorts of toxicity.